Welcome to State of Mind, Being Human and Living Well, broadcasting on KSQD Santa Cruz on 90.7 FM and live streaming at ksqd.org. I'm your host, Deborah Sloss, licensed marriage and family therapist. Today, we'll be discussing the role forgiveness plays in mental health and wellness. Psychologists generally define forgiveness as a conscious, deliberate decision to release feelings of resentment or vengeance toward a person or group who has harmed you, regardless of whether they actually deserve your forgiveness. The idea is that forgiveness can bring the forgiver peace of mind and frees them up from destructive anger. People who practice self-forgiveness tend to have better physical and mental health. And forgiving others may also improve our relationships with others. But what is forgiveness? An emotion, a behavior, an experience, a process, or an event? How does it work? And how would someone even begin to work on this? That's what we're here today to discuss with my two guests, Holocaust survivor Gitta Ryle and forgiveness expert Dr. Frederic Luskin. Stay with us and learn more about forgiveness. This show is being recorded in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic and while we're still sheltering in place here in California. So my guests and I are all recording from remote locations, and at times the sound quality is compromised by poor internet connection. Still, we thought the content of this discussion was meaningful enough that we wanted to share it with you. Let me tell you more about my two extraordinary guests today. Gitta Ryle is a local Santa Cruz resident and Holocaust survivor. She's here today to share her journey to mental wellness and the role that forgiveness has played along the way. After 7 years of living in hiding, World War II finally ended and Gitta was reunited with her mother and sister. She was 14 years old when she arrived in the United States. For many years, Gitta suffered from anxiety. By the time she reached adulthood, Gitta found herself sick with physical and mental health symptoms that included ulcers and panic attacks. Gitta was guided by her doctor to begin psychotherapy and embarked on a long road of self-discovery and healing. Once in therapy, she says things got worse before they got better, as she came in contact with her inner fears and negativity towards herself. Before therapy, Gitta says she just existed. Once in therapy, she worked hard to get well, and it was through that growth that she began to really live. Therapy helped her discover her true worth and learn to forgive herself and others. At 88, she now feels content with her life and values the peace she feels every day. She now understands and promotes honest communication and believes this leads to true understanding of what it is to be all together in this human experience. Also with us is Frederic Luskin PhD, who founded and currently serves as director of the Stanford University Forgiveness Projects. He's also senior consultant in health promotion and wellness at the Stanford University Health Center, a lecturer in Stanford School of Medicine, and department chair in clinical psychology at Sophia University. Dr. Luskin is the author of the best-selling books Forgive for Good, a proven prescription for health and happiness, and Forgive for Love, the missing ingredient for a healthy and happy relationship. Dr. Luskin's forgiveness work has been applied in veterans, hospitals, churches, in resolving legal disputes with cancer patients, as psychoeducation, and in psychotherapy. His research has shown that the Forgive for Good forgiveness methodology leads participants suffering from a wide range of concerns to improved physical and mental health. Dr. Luskin lectures and teaches widely on forgiveness, stress management, emotional intelligence, and happiness skills. He's also a frequent contributor to one of my favorite websites, Greater Good Magazine, Science-Based Insights for a Meaningful Life. I'm so honored to welcome both of these guests to State of Mind. Welcome, and thank you for being here with us today.
Welcome.
Thank you.
We're here.
So nice to have you. Gitta, I often like to start with what we call here the experiencer, And you're here today to share your remarkable story of survival and then healing after you and your sister escaped the Nazis and by living in hiding. Could you start by telling us an overview of what happened in your life that led you to your healing journey?
Well, if I have a few minutes, I'll just tell you that I was born in Vienna, Austria, a Jewish family, and was my sister, my mother and father, and just the four of us, and we lived comfortably before the Nazis came to Vienna. Once they came, um, they we had to register, and I have a passport that shows, the swastika and my name, that I was a student, and a big J on the passport that would let the Nazis know how many Jews. I guess people were very naive. Now, I was a little girl, and I didn't understand anything that was going on, but I knew that people were anxious. I mean, I felt, anxiousness already then because I didn't understand anything. And anyway, my dad had to leave to save himself to get picked up in a camp. And so I'm talking as a little girl. I was brokenhearted because, he was my hero. And then we my mother and my sister, by the way, didn't look Jewish. They were blonde and blue eyes, and I was dark with brown eyes, and I had to hide if anybody came to our place because my mother said, I don't want them to take you. Naturally, I was about 6.5. I don't understand anything of that, but I obeyed. So anyway, after the Kristallnacht happened in Vienna, where all the glass of the stores were broken and the temples were burned, uh, things became very chaotic, and my mother lost contact with my dad. Uh, we've had relatives that were able to come to America because they were sponsored by some cousins of ours that came before the war. But my mother's parents were still alive in Vienna, and she couldn't leave. So we were with her, and that's when she made a decision of sending us to a Jewish children's home. And again, that was very traumatic. I didn't understand anything. All I know that I was scared, and I did whatever they told me to do. And so we signed up for the OSE, which is Œuvre au Secours des Enfants, which means help to save the children. There was one group, the Kindertransport, that took some of my cousins and stuff to England. And then when that was full, the French wealthy families like the Rothschilds put money together to get as many Jewish kids from Austria and Germany for the future. So my mother signed Renee and me up. And I guess
Renee is who?
Renee is my sister, who is 3 years older, who she sadly died December 8th. But anyway, so she was told by my parents to never leave me out of her sight. So the day we got on the train and said goodbye to her mother, I felt some anger because I didn't understand. So I thought, well, they don't want me anymore. So the beliefs and the behaviors that I learned so young was from how I visualized what they said. It wasn't what it actually was, but that I didn't know because I was little. So we were put on the train and we went to France. And France then was not occupied. And I don't want to talk too long about it, but out of when the Nazis came and took over Paris, we were in a home outside of Paris. So they trucked us down to the center of France, and we then lived in a empty chateau with about 300 kids. And it was very difficult. We got sick a lot. And anyway, it was what it was. But again, I just followed what everybody told me. I didn't have an identity or anything. And so then we, the Germans caught us at the chateau. They took our older kids and some of our teachers, and the middle group, and was my sister in there, and I was in a younger group. They took us to Marseille. In Marseille, we were supposed to go on a ship that was leaving. This was in 42. The Nazis took over all of France, so we couldn't get on the ship because they would blow it up. So we had to hide again. And then the Osé told us that we couldn't stay together anymore. We had to split you up. There was no more Jewish organization. So some of us were put into a Catholic convent, and we were there till the Germans were starting to lose the war, but they were still looking to kill as many Jewish kids because they wanted to eradicate Judaism. So we, by the way, I liked when I was in the Catholic convent because that was the first place since we left our family that I had some continuity, and I was able to be part of anyway. But my sister she wasn't comfortable there. Anyway, I can just finish up by saying that I was very affected by the war as a child, and my sister had a different personality. And I just wanted to say that the last place we were put in after the convent, we were put in a French family. And that's the only time my sister and I were separated, and that was very traumatic too. But we're still in touch with the families that took us in then and saved us. Wow. And they were not Jewish. And I have this yin and the yang. There's good and bad every place. Then, we got reunited with my mother. And when we came to America, in November 11th of 1946. And then my mother wanted my sister and I to get married. So anyway, that's another story. I got married, and when my first two children were born and were about the age that my sister and I were when all of this started, somehow my physical and mental body just, I was kind of existing all the time anyway. I was not a happy camper. But at that time, all of a sudden, the stuff came up because I thought, could I have these two kids taken away from me or make them go to a safety place? So I got very bad ulcers and horrible, horrible anxiety attacks. And that's when I started therapy. And it was... I didn't know anything. I had never had therapy. And it was the beginning of my learning about myself. I remember the first thing I said to the therapist, I said, I should never have survived. I don't know why I'm here. I'm not a good mother. I'm not a good wife. I'm nothing. I just, I had no identity. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of when I started, and I was about 32 or something. And from then on, I did a lot of therapy to be where I am today, and I've learned a lot. So yeah, therapy definitely saved my life. Yeah.
You're tuned to listener-supported 90.7 FM KSQD Santa Cruz, K-Squid, many voices, one station. And this is State of Mind, being human and living well. I'm your host, Deborah Sloss, and I'm here talking with Gitta Ryle, a Holocaust survivor who's learned that forgiveness played an important role in her own journey to mental wellness. Also with us is forgiveness researcher, author, and expert, Dr. Frederic Luskin, who's helping us understand more about what forgiveness is and isn't, why it's of value, and ways to access it. So stay with us to learn more, and we'll be right back after this brief message from our underwriter.
KSQD thanks Family Service Agency of the Central Coast for supporting this program. Family Service Agency provides counseling and support for people of all ages facing life crises and challenges. You can reach them at 423-9444 to see if they can help you. Thank you, Family Service Agency of the Central Coast, for supporting KSQD 90.7 FM.
Back to our interview. What a story, and what a of survival, and also, it sounds like there was a whole nother story that began when you started going to therapy. When I first talked with you about coming on the show, you had said something about how you and your sister were so different, and how you experienced, those tragedies and traumas so differently. Do you want to say anything about what you came to realize about that as you were going through therapy?
Yes, it's interesting that we're from the same parents, but I think that uh, as I learned about belief and behavior from when we're born, we we adapt to whatever we see, how we see it, not how it's given to us. So therefore, Renee must have seen, differently what I saw in the belief, and me being more the anxious and scary girl, and she was more stoic. She didn't share emotions, and she became a nurse, and she never wanted to do therapy. The only thing I can tell you is when I was doing therapy, and I told her, I'm really finding out things of that I never knew that was bothering me. And she says, "Oh, if I did therapy," her exact words, "they'll put me in the nut house." And that's how she felt. Her husband was a doctor, she was a nurse, and then neither one of them, and they both could have used it. But I kept going, and I did my work because I physically and mentally needed to be well. And I loved my sister, and I accepted that, this is where she needed to be. But I continued work, and it wasn't easy. I had many downs, and had to recoup again, and use what I learned. And each death, I had so many deaths in my family that I had to, I remember when my husband died, I just for 2 years, I was down again. But then, I don't know, sometimes, we're all kinds of survivors. And so why? I don't ask why anymore. Life just is. So here I am. And my purpose of what I'm doing, telling my story and my therapy stuff, is to students or anybody, to them never to forget that there was a Holocaust and a war, and that I lived in it. So there's no denial, and I make them my ambassadors
Yeah.
to be my ambassadors, never to forget. So everybody that I've touched, at least, will feel that they will remember, so that when I die, it's not going away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I want to just tell you that I feel so fortunate, really, to have you here telling your story. And,
Mhm.
there's not that many people left who can share their
Yes.
firsthand accounts. And so it is really important that you share your story. Thank you. Can you talk about what role forgiveness has played in your journey?
Well, I felt that when I discovered that I was not responsible for all of the things that happened in the world, and to me and to my father and family. And I realized that it was all in my physical and mental body. And that's why I had these anxiety and stuff. So I learned that if I let go in me all the negativity and the sadness, the anger, the wanting to kill, uh, wanting not to live, all of those, if I could let them go and give them back to the perpetrators, but never forget. So my way, and this, like I say, it's maybe different, and maybe Fred can put some light to it. I feel that I need to be mentally and physically healthy, and any negativity in my body uh, deters from that. So I'm not in charge of, I can not forget what the past did, but, and that's why I can't forgive them, which, you know, some people need to do that to feel better. I don't have to do that. I just have to remember to feel better in keeping all the negativity, judgment, uh, all of these things about other people and humanity out of me. And does that make any sense?
Well,
I don't know.
that would be a good time maybe to turn to Fred and ask
Yes,
him,
I would love to
you know,
hear what he has
yeah,
to say.
yeah. So we're also fortunate to have Dr. Frederic Luskin, who developed Forgive for Good methodology. So Fred, you write and speak and teach about forgiveness. What do you have to say about what forgiveness is, and how does that relate to what Gitta might have been sharing just now?
You know, the first thing I'd want to say even before that is, I mean, there is such a need for people like her to continue to tell their story. Um, and I was raised Jewish, and I don't buy the, how would I put it, the tribal view that one culture's suffering is so awful or so unique. But there is a human tendency to deny responsibility for harming other people, and it's pervasive, and it's so destructive. And you know, there, whether it's in a marriage from an affair, or whether something it's as horrible as the Holocaust, and now there's all the Holocaust deniers, and it's really important to remind people of both parts of her message, that people do horrendous things to others, and as an individual, as in a group, you can get past the bitterness. That both parts of that are essential. Um, and that's the essence of forgiveness. It's not a minimization of how awful people are or how much suffering there is. It's a full-hearted acknowledgement of how horrible people are and how much suffering. And it reminds everybody that we each and collectively have a capacity to move past our woundedness, our bitterness, our nastiness ourselves. And that's what makes forgiveness so important, that it's not like a new agey minimization or a denial or any of the things that qualify as pseudo forgiveness. It's real, like investigation and understanding that this is a very difficult and painful world for lots and lots and lots of people, but they don't have to continue to inflict suffering upon themselves years and years later simply because they hold on to a grudge.
Fred, I'm so grateful that you shared that
Mhm.
insight because, so many of, um, I would say, the people that take an interest in our show and struggle with different mental health challenges have trauma also in their background. So, what a valuable perspective to
Mhm.
bring up. I really appreciate that.
And it's the really challenging piece of all this, because a lot of so-called survivors want to milk their trauma for all it's worth. They want exemptions, they want excuses, they don't want to be responsible for the rest of their lives because they've suffered. Suffering is ubiquitous. It's everywhere here. It's the question is, can you hold your own suffering without losing sight of the fact that it's just one piece of suffering on an enormous world of suffering, and that you yourself can move past it.
Thank you. I'm thinking here we are, we're talking about forgiveness. How would you define it, Fred?
Well, there's probably the best definition I've ever heard was a fairly well-known bumper sticker, I think, by Abigail around the death of her child. Forgiveness is giving up all hope for a better past. And that's probably the best definition that I've ever heard, that many of us live in all sorts of fantasies about what should or shouldn't have happened, and how the world should have unfolded, and how the universe has made all these mistakes in giving me this, that, or the other thing. It's all wasted. We define forgiveness from our world of universities as making peace with the word no. So we define it as kind of a evolution from I'm going to say, a hissy fit when the world doesn't give you what you want, through that hissy fit, which is an essential part of it, to acceptance, to resolution, to opening back up to life, that the hissy fit is just the first step.
So I'm curious, behind everyone's interest, there's usually a story, Fred. And so, how did you get interested in forgiveness, and why?
I mean, I have two divergent or convergent paths. One was I was badly hurt by a friend a long time ago, back when I was living in Santa Cruz. And it was a kind of betrayal, and I didn't know how to handle it. That's one. The other was I've had a long-standing meditation practice and interest in spiritual factors. And so when I was looking to do my dissertation out of Stanford back 25 years ago, I wanted a topic that touched psychospiritual questions. And forgiveness was the only one at that point that had any prior research. So I was limited to that, because you can't, as a doctoral student, invent a field. So I channeled my interest in psychospirituality and making it scientific um, into the study of forgiveness.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
When you listened to Gitta's story, were there any key features that you heard in there that you would commonly teach when you're trying to teach about the concept of forgiveness?
I think the couple, the first, the one that I heard was like before therapy. She wasn't fully cognizant of the damage that had been done to her well-being.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a huge problem for all sorts of trauma and all sorts of things, that we're not taught enough that there can be long-standing consequences to terrible things that happen to us. But we're also not taught that you can get over them. I mean, so it's both. The second was a kind of reminder of personal responsibility, that no matter what has happened to you, you have to wake up and decide what kind of day you want. But it can't happen before you're fully aware of the damage done to you. And that's the order that we teach forgiveness, that you have to fully own and feel the horror of it, and the absolute injustice of it, and the grotesque way that human beings can convince themselves that they're doing okay when they're doing horrible things to other people. You have to embrace all that somehow make peace with the fact that you touched what might have been legitimately called evil and still decide that this is a life worth living and it's still a earth with tremendous beauty on it that you don't want to miss. So that's what I've seen as a helpful therapeutic arc.
Gitta, I'm really interested as you hear Fred describe forgiveness that way and you think about your own journey and story. Are there any elements of that that you feel really linked to your experience?
Well, I I came to mind with all the work I did, and I did so many modes of therapy that from each one I took what would work for me or not, and that's how I've evolved to get rid of the demons in my physical and mental, and I stick with that because it worked for me, and I try and continue every day. I mean, when this stuff came up that we couldn't get out of our houses, it brought up some stuff for me because and I was surprised. But this stuff just never leaves you till I guess we die. But I felt all of a sudden like, oh, what's going on? I couldn't go out. I had to hide. I couldn't, so for a minute I had to do some work on that, and I was able to say, this is what's happening. And I work a lot in being in reality, in the now. And I love what he said about the meditation. I try and I work on meditation. I'm friendly with a wonderful Buddhist nun, and I, like he said, I'm Jewish, but I'm like I said, I'm Jewish, but I'm not a traditional Jew or religious Jew because I didn't get all that upbringing, and but I just I don't know how to say it, but I'm at peace. I'm at peace, and I try to promote peace and love and not hate. Really, it's the opposite of how I felt, as a child. Mm-hmm. So I think that I'm doing okay with what I am, and hopefully stay that way.
Well, I saw your head bobbing up and down, especially when Fred was talking about that you have to get up every day and decide, today I'm going to live my life.
Yeah,
take
That's
responsibility.
Right. That's so important. Yeah. And, there are, like he said, there's a lot of people that are denied about things or feel like, the things should be done right and all that. But, because I've done so much work and because I want to live now, whatever time I've got left in this earth, I don't listen to that anymore. Those people, they need to take care of themselves and need to find that whatever it is for themselves to be at least content and not angry and stuff.
You're tuned to listener-supported 90.7 FM KSQD K-Squid, and this is State of Mind, Being Human and Living Well. We're also live streaming over the web at ksqd.org. I'm your host, Deborah Sloss, and this show is about the role of forgiveness in mental health and wellness. Today I'm here talking with Gitta Ryle, a Holocaust survivor, who's sharing her story of how she learned that forgiveness played an important role in her own journey to mental wellness. Also with us is forgiveness researcher, author, and expert Dr. Frederic Luskin, who's helping us understand more about what forgiveness is and isn't, why it's of value, especially now as we navigate life in the coronavirus pandemic, and ways to help you access your forgiveness. I want to remind listeners that all the resources we talk about in this show can be found at ksqd.org/ /state-of-mind/. Back to our interview. You know, Fred, I'd love to come back to you and ask you, so as we're talking about forgiveness, what is it? Is it a process? Is it an event? Is it an emotion, a behavior? What would you say about that?
I mean, the same question could be asked about any aspect of human experience. It's part of being a human, and our minds like to break it up into little quantities that we put back together. What I would say is there are multiple portals of entry to looking at forgiveness. So you could look at it as a spiritual question. You know, how do I let go of bitterness in a difficult experience? Maybe I believe the universe has purpose. Maybe I believe that God is testing me. Maybe I see it as part of my spiritual evolution. So that would be a portal of entry. You could look at it as a physical portal of entry. Like, do I want to give myself high blood pressure for the next 40 years by arguing about my own life? Um, so I would say that the one constant that we have been able to use for helping people understand how they can become more forgiving is by reminding them that the easiest, maybe not the easiest, the clearest way to create forgiveness is to change the way you talk to yourself about your own life. So at its core, forgiveness is a change of story that you tell yourself. So, and I was going to say that, this story is one of like worldwide horror, of mass genocide. But you meet people all the time or I do, who tell me, I can't be nice to this world because I wasn't loved as a child. So they have created a story about their own childhood that limits their effectiveness as an adult. By the time you've told that story 100 times, it really doesn't even matter what the past was, because we make up most of our story anyway. So there's this central theme of human beings find ways of creating stories based on threat, which they tend to share with members of their own tribe, so the tribe can have a common enemy that needs protection from. And again, the simplest, but not necessarily easy, is inside of ourselves. We can change the story we tell about our own life, and we can free ourselves.
Yeah.
Fred, I'm so glad that you bring up the idea of many portals of entry, and that seems to be true for a lot of kind of change, and that some people might have more access through one portal over another. I saw again, Gitta, I saw your head going up and down as you talked about the power of changing one's own story. And do you want to say anything about how that played out in your own healing journey?
Well, that's exactly what I did is look at all of these things and all of the negativity that I held that was not, you know, giving me any good feelings. But also acceptance. I also use the acceptance of who I am, and having felt like I didn't belong in this world, and I wanted to die even as an adult. And I felt till I was able to recognize that I had a space here, and that I did that. The horrible people in this world wanted to kill me. I needed to get that clearness in me to accept the way I am, as I am, and that I have a place here. And so first, I mean, to read the truth, I had to find a way of loving myself, because I didn't love myself. I mean, I thought I was ugly. I mean, everything negative that you could imagine. And I just wasn't worth living. And so recognizing that warts and all, no matter what, I'm a survivor of also this trauma. And so forgiving and letting go and acceptance of whatever people want to do, they have to own it. I cannot own what they're doing. I can feel bad, and I can think it's horrible, but they own it. I don't. Does that make any sense? It's just that's how I needed to make clearness in my body. And it's a long process. I made some notes here, but I'm just talking off my head.
Let me just ask you, as you did that and engaged in those processes that you were just describing, did your physical health improve?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Anxiety attacks. I know now, I used to get migraines too. I can now do some meditation, and if I feel a migraine coming on or an anxiety, I do the breathing, I do meditation, and I am in the now. I always come back to what is now. I look around me, and this is it. This is not whatever my mind is telling me is going on, the fears. So that's how I let it go. And so far it's work. I mean, it's work every day. Don't think that everything is rosy. I wake up in the morning and I have gratitude for what I'm able to do, and I just go on, and yeah.
That's a good point, because my follow-up question was going to be to ask you, how long would you say it took you to find your way to forgiveness? And I think I hear you saying you're still working on it.
Yes, I mean, the main one, definitely I feel much better. But as soon as I feel some negativity coming my way, I take care of it, And I mean, and I talk to people too. I don't allow any negativity to come to me now without speaking to that person and letting them know that they can't do that, to me. They can do it to themselves. And, when I talk at schools, I tell the kids, the bullying is, who's the bullier? The bullier has a problem. If you allow the bullier to get to you, you become a victim. And I said, so that's what I felt. I was a victim all the time of everything. I took everything on. While if you are strong enough and know yourself, you say, oh boy, well, whatever that person has a problem, they're going to have to take care of themselves, but I'm not going to take it on. And that was a process too that helped me a lot.
Don't you just love it when you hear somebody talking from a place of mental health?
Yes.
Yes.
Like I tell kids that you don't have to be the victim.
Yeah.
I remind them that there are ways to see one's life in the present, recognize this is the only life I have, and right now I'm responsible for it. That is an essential mental health stance.
Thank you. Yeah.
And it's a wonderful testimony that no matter how badly somebody is treated, we don't lose the capacity to have mental health.
You're tuned to listener-supported 90.7 FM KSQD, K-Squid, community radio for the Monterey Bay. And this is State of Mind, being human and living well. We're also live streaming over the web at ksqd.org. I'm your host, Deborah Sloss, and I'm here talking with Gitta Ryle, a Holocaust survivor who has learned that forgiveness played an important role in her own journey to mental wellness. Also with us today is forgiveness researcher, author, and expert, Dr. Frederic Luskin, who's helping us understand more about what forgiveness is and isn't, why it's more important than ever in these troubled times of the coronavirus, and ways you could begin your own forgiveness practices. Stay with us to learn more, including information about local resources. We'll be right back after this brief message from our underwriter.
KSQD thanks Nonviolent Communication Santa Cruz for supporting State of Mind. Nonviolent Communication Santa Cruz offers a variety of skill-building classes that support healthy relationships. More information is available at nvcsantacruz.org. Thank you, Nonviolent Communication Santa Cruz, for supporting community radio. KSQD 90.7 FM.
Back to our interview. Fred, I want to ask you if you could say what you see as the key elements of the forgiveness process.
I'm going to give you two, not just one. The first one is a willingness to grieve one's losses and accept one's pain. That forgiveness becomes an issue when there's an unwillingness to grieve, so we push away our vulnerability and we push away our suffering. Or two, when we hold on to our suffering as if it's unique and we then impose it on the rest of the world. But forgiveness requires grieving and vulnerability and a willingness to acknowledge that I was incapable at that time of preventing a hurt, that I'm as a human being willing to feel the pain, and then as a human being I'm taking responsibility for my experience to move out of the pain. Both parts of that are the crucial pieces: a willingness to grieve and hold the wound, and then a willingness to let it go.
Gitta, as you think about your own journey, does any of that seem to fit for what you think you've gone through as you've been going through these different therapies and seeing this change in yourself over time?
Oh, yes, I agree very much. Allowing myself to, I always use the word accept, I know there's a different word, that I had that life and that I had the losses, and I communicate with my own way with all of the people that I love that are gone from this world, and just oh gosh, it's so hard to express. I wish I could talk like Fred because he has it all so well said. But no, it is what it is. I do feel that I cannot solve the world problem, and acceptance of that has helped me. I can individually be of some help if people want to listen. But again, when I tell my story, I always say it's just a story. Everybody has one. But the idea is that I have found that you can live with that, but accept that you can change and put it aside and live the way I do. And I don't know, I wish I had a better way of saying.
I'm so glad you're here telling your story too. So as we get close to the end of our time, I'm just wondering if a listener could relate to some or all of what either of you have shared today, and they were thinking about how they might begin to embark on their own journey of forgiveness. What would you, Fred, suggest as a first step? And then what?
What we have found, the first step is for people who turn to forgiveness is they get tired of their suffering, and for a moment there's a glimpse that they can do something about it. That most of our suffering beyond legitimate grieving is victimhood. I'm not responsible. Bad things happen to me. They're the cause of my life's being bad now, not me. And that kind of creates a loop that makes people feel powerless. And then there's a moment where it's something interrupts that, and they go, wow, I could look at it a little differently, or maybe there's a hope for me to see it differently, or I'm as sick of the way I'm doing it as I am what happened. And they stick their head up for a moment and they sniff around, and it's still a beautiful world with the sun shining. And then they go back into their victim place, but they don't fully forget that the sun's shining and it's beautiful out. Something allows a moment of either, grandeur of life or a tiredness of their own maintaining of a deep-seated, I'm not responsible to make myself happy. Something shifts and, oh wait, I can do more for me.
Beautiful. So, Gita, I know that you also prepared some resources that you wanted to share with our listeners that might support them in their own mental health and wellness journey.
Well,
Would
where
you
did I
like to
put it?
share any of those?
Well, through my journey, I've done, I've worked, believe it or not, for suicide prevention, uh, which was, again, something that I wanted to do and hear from people who had problems. I worked with, like I said, the juvenile hall. The other thing was hospice. When my husband died, I was able to go with a group and grieve and learn how to grieve, not just for him, but for all the people I lost. And the hardest one was always my father, because he died in Auschwitz, and I will never know how he died. And I had to work very hard on letting that, making peace with that, which I finally was able to do. But uh, the other thing, so it's hospice, and we did a children. I love to work with children, so after I was trained to do a children's group for kids that lost a family member, and teaching them about the important thing. It's not their fault, because that's the first thing that kids think, and how to learn how to grieve, and mainly not feeling that it was their fault, type stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And what else? God, I can't remember. Did I tell you other things? I wrote it down, but now I forget.
Well, we have the National Suicide Prevention Hotline, I believe,
Yeah,
up there,
yeah.
and
Oh,
the
good.
Volunteer Center if people want to step up and try to help in their own communities,
Mm-hmm.
and some resources for counseling. Family Service Agency, who provides sliding
Yes.
scale
Yeah.
counseling. So we'll make sure all of those are listed on the resource list that's posted along with the podcast of the
Yeah.
show on ksqd.org website. So
Okay.
just, as we wrap up, I'm wondering if there's any closing thoughts either of you want to share with our listeners, maybe some main points or things that we didn't have time to get to today. Fred, would you like to start?
Well, just if there's anybody out there who wanted to see more of the work we've done, I mean, the book Forgive for Good has sold hundreds of thousands of
Mm-hmm.
copies. If you look my name up on Google, there's probably, I don't know, 100 videos or, somewhere of me teaching forgiveness. But the place where I would always leave this is the most important place to forgive is if you're holding a grudge to someone you care about. That's where
Mm-hmm.
you practice. That's what matters the most. Let it go. Like that's the most important use of forgiveness is for the people you're intimately linked with, where it really matters to them if you're withholding, and if you're in a relationship which you want to maintain, that's where your biggest forgiveness efforts should go, because that's the place that your beneficence will have the most impact.
Nice. Yeah.
Gitta, any last thoughts?
Well,
Anything?
I kind of, the thought was to be true to myself and to others, to be true to yourself and open to communication, acceptance, and of non-judgment, of being here or self, and to, if you have a problem, to ask for help. And the experience of living instead of just existing has given me peace.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm your host, Deborah Sloss, and I want to say thank you again to my guests today, Gitta Ryle and Dr. Frederic Luskin. And thanks to you for joining us here on State of Mind, Being Human and Living Well. To hear more conversations about mental health and wellness here on California's Central Coast, join me on the first Sunday of every month from 6 to 7 p.m. right here at KSQUID 90.7 FM. You can also find all the podcast episodes of this show on our ksqd.org website just by typing State of Mind in the search bar. And you can catch any of your favorite programs on KSQUID through your home smart speaker. Special thanks to Jeannie Baldzikowski for audio production and to Jennifer Young, who assists with research and outreach. And thanks to acoustic guitarist Adrian Legg for composing, performing, and donating the use of our theme music. This is listener-supported community radio, so that means we want and we need to hear from you. So let us know what you think about this or any of the shows you're hearing here on KSQUID. Just send us an email at onair@ksqd.org. This is KSQD Santa Cruz. Just remember, 90.7 FM, KSQUID, your ink spot on the dial. Stay with us.